right, so welcome everybody to the channel. Here at Stranger Fruit, we provide Black and minority medical professionals the space to share fruits of wisdom, knowledge, and vulnerability, hoping these seeds help you grow in your life and the lives of those around you. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning for more fruit, I'm glad we can provide something meaningful to come back to. We're now in the final season of Stranger Fruit, and what an amazing journey it has been. And what a better way to begin the season than with an episode dedicated to the root of it all: consistency. Consistency is often talked about in the context of habits and routines. We hear it all the time: stay consistent and the results will follow. But what I want us to dig into is deeper than that. What is consistency really? Is it about repetition, or is it about alignment, or both? Joining us today to unpack all of this is someone whose life exemplifies what it means to show up with consistency. He's a fourth-year medical student at Howard U, a future ophthalmologist, and a world-class photographer. And above all else, someone who brings harmony between their habits, values, and goals. Welcome to the show, Luke Nelson.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you for coming in. I know we talked about it a little bit before, but how's your day been so far, and how's this year been for you?
Yeah, this year has been really, really, really great. I've just been able to unpack, my life and just learn so much about myself. And I think that's really one of the great things about medical school, is that you start to really develop a greater understanding of yourself through the process. And that's something that I didn't necessarily anticipate to the depth at which it is currently occurring. But it's really a beautiful unfolding process. And today has been really great too. I'm currently on the surgery rotation, and so I just was able to find like a small slither of time to chat with you, thankfully. And I'm really excited to dig into consistency.
Yeah, man, and I appreciate you sharing that. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like whether you have routine or goal, whatever, life, the days tomorrow's gonna come, and tomorrow is always, it seems like that is something that the universe, I feel like, almost creates within all of us, is a consistency within itself. Is that if you have, let's say you have this goal and you have this dream, it's not that you get to the end, it's every single day in between that creates this entire that creates the destination, right? It's not that, oh, I graduated medical school, it was every day that nobody else saw. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And something I wanted to ask was, what is something consistent about your routine that brought you a sense of peace or purpose that allows you to kind of get through this part of the journey? Because I know it's not easy, especially surgery.
No, for sure. I think a very consistent part of my routine that has kept me really in alignment with my purpose is really just always going back to this like manifesto that I wrote for myself. I have it in my room, and I always go back to that, and I think that's something that I always kind of play in my mind, is just keeping that vision alive for myself. Because I think sometimes, as you were saying, right, you have to become obsessed with the process as part of the journey. It's the every single day aspect that really comprises the sum total of the journey. And so for me personally, what I tend to do is just really learn the process as much as possible. And I think that that's what keeps me dialed in as well into the journey, and keeps me consistent. And so, when I always, like I was saying, I've framed it in my room, and I think that even though that I may be going through whatever struggle that I may be facing in that particular moment, I always go back to it. Whether it's in my mind or in my journaling, in my meditative process, and just having that sort of constant meditation of my purpose is really, really, really something that keeps me going. It keeps me really energized. It really keeps me focused. And And I think that this is something that I was really excited to come and talk to you today because, I recently was facing a very, 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 just this very deep seated worry of just my purpose. Because I found that even on my surgery rotation, just being faced with very difficult things, having to do very difficult tasks or whatever specific to the day-to-day was really putting me in a position that I started to really question my purpose. And I think that I recently had a very major, I guess, breakthrough in terms of being able to kind of process through that. And one of the things that I came away with is that, the difficulty of the task does not discount you from your purpose. And I think that's very important because sometimes we may be encountering difficult tasks because when we set out on the journey, we don't necessarily have all of the atomic particles figured out. We don't know what the day-to-day life is going to be. We don't know the emotional waves that we're going to be faced with, the ups and downs, the hills, the climbs, and all of those components. And so it's really important, I find, to just always really not allow the difficulty of the task to really determine how you conceptualize your purpose as you are living that large encompassing journey.
I like that. And there's two things I actually wanted to mention, I guess talk about based on your response to that, because that was I feel like a wonderful response because it kind of, there was so many layers to it. The first thing was the idea that you said, which was the difficulty of the journey and not allowing it to change yourself, your perception of what you believe your purpose is to be. And I think because the difficulty of the journey and let's say, like, not just for people that are in medicine, people going through life in general, you're going to reach a place in your life where you're going to do something difficult where it's going to cause you to question yourself.
Yes.
And question versions of yourself you thought you knew.
Yes.
And so it's because of that, it's almost like a default to be like, well, oh, my purpose, I did think that I was supposed to, like, be the CEO of this company, or I did think that I was supposed to graduate medical school in 4 years, or I did think I was supposed to do this and that. But it's because the fire is so of this whatever thing that you're facing is so hot that it makes you feel like you have to just jump completely, get into the deep end of the ocean,
right.
Do something completely drastic,
in
order to feel like you have to, in order to get some kind of relief. But in reality, maybe you just, like, your skin has to develop that through that fire more in order to know what the next thing is coming and know how to deal with that. So I really did like that, because a lot of times I think we do get in our own head once that dial is turned up on life. And is there even a way that we can, like, I guess, because it's easy right now, like where we're talking, today's Friday,
right.
You know what I'm saying, it's like we got into medical school, we're living our dreams, whatever. We're almost at the back end of our journey.
Right.
So it's kind of easy to talk about, life is good, but like when we're in those absolute, like, trenches of life, like, how do we I guess come back and tap back into this, right? Because you said something about meditative process. Is that something that you use, or is there something else? And I think that brings me to my next thought or question, which is the manifesto. So, like, what is this manifesto, if you don't mind me asking? And what made you write it, and what is in it?
Yeah. I think that is those are two very great questions. One, the meditative process, and I'll probably start off with that. I think that for me, it's really just a conversation that you really have in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you don't even have to share with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that no one really has to know. It's something that is really in the crevices of like your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is also a conversation that you have with God.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's also part of it too. Is sort of understanding that, this understanding that this too shall pass, right? This understanding that whatever it is that I'm going through, whatever, that I'm feeling emotionally, will have an endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that also is something that you can anchor yourself into, is this understanding that there's a start and there's an end. And what you do in between is really about how intentional you want to be about how you get to the end point. And I think that that's very important, and sort of that really dovetails into this understanding of, the manifesto, this sort of, this declaration of your purpose, I would say, of my purpose. And I think I'm very big on journaling, I'm very big on creating, and I'm very big on, having physical representation of your vision. I think that it's very powerful when you speak, right? The art of podcasting, the art of, televised media, right? I think these are very important mediums in which we receive information. Stimulating the senses is very important. And so what I try to do every day or so is stimulate my senses with my understanding of who I am. Because oftentimes, when you turn on the TV, when you are, if you have a television, I don't have a television, but if you have whatever it is on your phone, right, on YouTube, whether it's TikTok, whether it's, all forms of social media, you're constantly getting messages. Those are intentional messages that are not from your own understanding.
Right.
That's not from your own development.
Right.
And so what we have to do each day is we're constantly having to parse through so much information, so much data about, ourselves, especially when we think about algorithms and we think about, what that does, to your own consistency, right? And kind of anchoring it into a consistency in an understanding of yourself. I think that that's very important, that consistency needs to be rooted in something that you have developed. You have to be the architect of that before you go out and have to, face the world, because the world is constantly sending you messages about who you think that, or who, whatever, algorithm thinks that of me. I have to know who I am first and foremost before, interjecting myself into a space in which I'm constantly getting bombarded with very confusing, very demeaning, very belittling, very disheartening messages that don't have anything to do with me. And so I think that in terms of what I have in my personal manifesto is really this understanding of, the type of person that I want to be, the type of, and I think also when we're talking about purpose, right? It's more than just saying that, I am a doctor or I want to become a doctor. It's more so saying that I want to heal. I want to be of service to those around me. I want to impact the health of others in a very enriching and impactful way. It's sort of expanding the definitions of your life and creating more rich context and kind of deepening that colorful palette that's associated with you and who you are. So instead of just saying like, I am a florist, No, I am someone who is able to see the beauty and the nature around me and be able to collect them in a very beautiful and appealing way for those to celebrate in harmony with me, right? Those are how we can start to expand the meaning and deepen the context of our life. And I think that's the power of a manifesto. I really appreciate that, that process every day.
Wow, that's beautiful. And there's a lot to unpack there. I feel like that's such a podcast word, unpack.
Right.
But I feel like something you said, which is I feel like a lot of us have difficulty answering, is the idea of self. Like, what is self? What is it a part of us? Is it just the sum of a whole? Is it like and when you ask people who they are, it's funny because you hit the nail on the head before I could even ask, before I could even put the nail down. And I was gonna say, what do you say? Well, I was gonna ask, what do you say to people who, when you ask them who they are, they name all of the things that they do. And so, what is self to you?
Yeah, that is a very, 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 very important question. And I have now known, I've grown to know that self is really always evolving. And I think just really accepting that the person that I was yesterday is not the person that I am today. The way that I probably thought about something 10 minutes ago can instantly change, in a second, right? And I think for me, having that adaptable definition of self is so important. Because when you become very rigid in the ways in which you think, the way in which you show up, the ways in which you interact with other people, all of which also comprises self, right? The way, like I said, the way you think, the way you show up, the way you interact with other people. Part of it is the way that you see yourself. And also we accumulate definitions relative to others and how people see us in the truth that they see us, that we allow them to experience. Because that's also something that I've also known, is that there are so many parts to self that not all the sum total of that self is always going to have so much, not necessarily shine, but having that self always show up, fully is really impossible. I think it's really a taxing project. It's really exhausting, and it's also very confusing to those around you, because there are parts of us that don't necessarily have functionality to the spaces that we inhabit on a regular basis. And so as much as we want those pieces of ourselves to consistently show up, right? That just kind of going back to that idea of consistency, that's a very hard bar to climb. And that's something that I always go back to as well. I think that when we grow up and we watch television shows, right, we're able to kind of go on this journey with the protagonist, right, or the anti-hero, or whoever it is in their story or narrative that we're invested in. We know the conversation that person is having with themselves, whoever it is. We know what their modus operandi is. We know what their goal is by the end of the episode and what we want them, or what we're rooting for them to achieve. And so we're in on it. But if you really take a step back, we have that privilege of being in on that particular journey. And so I think we grow up feeling as though that, that landscape, that particular narrative view, right, is something that we have to carry forward every single day. This high bar of vulnerability, this really high bar of just really, this idea of authenticity being, equal to multiple selves appearing at the same time. I don't think that that's actually realistic. I think that that comes from a very specific space in terms of narrative storytelling that is probably not, at least for me, I don't know. What about you? Do you feel like that's achievable?
No. I think a lot of it does come from, you know, film and TV. We watch it and we feel it because we grew up seeing, you know, like, you know, all these shows and movies and, because, you know, Cinderella had this dream growing up, whatever, or whatever we're watching, they had a goal at the beginning of the movie. They continue to have that dream. They continue to have that goal. And at the end, they achieve that goal. We're celebrating the protagonist. Whoop-de-whoop, everybody has a great day. But that's not life, because in reality, we want everything to have meaning and form.
Yes.
Right? And in reality, I think you kind of helped me actually fully understand what I feel like is like self is almost like molecules of water. It's like you see how many forms there is of water, and in different spaces you can evolve and change, and you can and when you look at an ocean, right, you see the top layer, but that doesn't give you the picture of what the sea looks like, right? The sea floor.
I got chills when you said
right,
that.
man. And it's because it's one of those things where it's like, it should make sense that the ocean floor should look like what the top looks like, but that's not the case. And so in my mind, I think the goal isn't to maybe figure out self, because maybe it's something we can't ever truly understand, but in reality, it's to understand that you have to be okay with continuous change.
Yes.
And like, okay, I have enough strength where, you know, like how water turns to ice and can hold things on top, and people can skate on it and have a good time, and you can hold your family up. But sometimes you can't do that. You know, you're gaseous. You know, you're a gaseous form, and being okay with that, and not saying like, okay, I'm in this place in my life where I know I should be happy, because I find myself in a lot of those spaces, and I think it's because of that. Like you mentioned, where we have this viewpoint of everything has to have form. I'm the protagonist in my story, so at the end of the story, I should be happy. I should be this happy, or have this amount of happiness that I don't have, and now I feel worse, or now I'm questioning: is this everything? Is this the things that I should have done with my life? When in reality, you were exactly who you were supposed to be. In that space.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah. No, I'm so happy that 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 we're having this conversation, because this is so critical, and to the pieces like we were talking about of consistency, right? I think that we are expecting this very consistent joy. We're expecting, as we sort of navigate through our purpose, that we're not supposed to be met with resistance. And I think oftentimes the resistance comes from within. It comes from that self. And so when I talk about the self existing in this time-space reality at this snapshot moment, right? The joy is supposed to, it's not to say that it's supposed to be extracted in this present moment, but it's this understanding that joy is within reach. If I can go into, the recesses of my meditative process and really search really deeply within, I can find the joy. If I really, really, really try very hard, I can kind of trace it. I can kind of trace my way into it in this way that there's so many gradients of emotion. And I think that's often very important. I think sometimes there's this color wheel of emotions, and I think that we have to expand our language vocabulary as it relates to the ways in which that we express our current feelings. I think that sometimes we've been taught that angry, sad, happy, and joy, or so, and then those exist in very specific ways. But there's so many other emotions that can describe how you feel. You may not be, over the moon, joyous, but you're probably content. You're probably peaceful. You're probably at a peaceful state of rest. You probably are, not confused.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you are given an invitation to be curious in that particular moment, right? And I think, sometimes we adopt these languages and we inculcate them into our own vocabulary and it's not the most healthy process, right? And I think that sometimes when we inherit these aspects, we have to be very, very, very careful. And I love what you were saying about the fluidity, that exists in the different states of H2O, of water, right? And I think that that's also, you have to be able to appreciate those states of being. And I think that through appreciating those multiple states of being, that evolution of self, and loving yourself at every stage in the process, and really developing that honor for yourself, for your heart, that is achievable.
Right.
That is something that I can be consistent in, because I know the compartments of myself. I can honor the compartments of myself. I can choose to show up, as an honest being, as someone who is of service, as someone who wants to display gratitude, choosing to be silent in moments, and listening and connecting with individuals. Those are, options that I can sort of dial into at any moment in time. And I think that that's so empowering when you understand that I don't have to present myself as one way, as one thing all the time to satisfy someone else. And I can often go into that knowing that I can choose anything for myself, and really be consistent in that. Because if I want to satisfy this person and satisfy this next person, that's not consistency, right? Consistency is rooting yourself in who you are, and choosing to extend that which you have inside of you to someone else as an invitation. I think that's more powerful than it's very dizzying when trying to satisfy the requirements of others.
Because every standard is different. You're trying to fit yourself in a place in which everybody's idea of what you are is different, which is why it's so interesting, this idea that you said of self and how we talked about it, which was like everybody has a different version of who they think you are.
Yes, right.
And so it's like, to try to fit into that, it's almost impossible, because they don't have the full story. Only you do. And it goes back to the thing that you said, which was, it's like sometimes we take on words, and there's certain words that I think, or I guess we need to somehow broaden our vocabulary. But sometimes I think that the English language puts us at a deficit, because I don't think sometimes we have enough words in the English vocabulary to fully encompass the things that we're truly feeling. If you look at some of the French language, I can't remember the word, but they have these languages, but it means multiple things. It's a very complex way. I'll have to show it to you after the pod. I might have to post it or put it in the show notes or whatever. But it's this idea of it's not just, oh, I am content, but also content with feelings of something. I don't know, but it's more so, it's more than just, it is or it isn't, black and white sometimes. And I think because of that, because we're already working sometimes at a deficit, whether we know or unknow it, it makes it that much more paramount that we have to spend time with ourselves and getting to know these different phases, or these different, like you said, with the consistency of self, and being able to love these different forms of our being. So I guess, speaking of that, I think that's just a beautiful segue into the next part of this conversation, which is the second definition of consistency, is that the harmony between the parts and the whole. And we already talked about that, not ad nauseum, but we've been kind of harping on it.
Right.
And so I want to lead that with the question of, what do you think the core components that make up your consistency? What habits and values or relationships keep you grounded and in alignment? And then how do you know when you're out of alignment?
Yeah. For me, really, I think about, I have a Google Calendar. Wait.
Shout out to Google Calendar. I do too, though.
Yeah. No, shout out there because I have this really, really, really colorful Google Calendar, and I have divided myself. I have what's called segments of intention.
Okay.
And so that creates specific segments of time where I am intending to do very specific tasks that are under a very specific umbrella. Okay? So for my home, that is one segment of intention. Whether it's paying my utility bills, whether it's paying my rent, whether it is calling the utility services to make sure that they cut the bill down or whatever it is, that goes under that particular umbrella. Then I have one umbrella that is focused on school. And even within that, am I doing research? Am I doing leadership activities? That is a segment of intention. And I think that really creates a very organized approach when staying grounded and staying consistent, because now you are operating under very specific goals, and those goals have objectives, right? And those goals are associated with the purpose behind a particular umbrella. And I think that's very important, is understanding who are you accountable to and what parts of yourself that you also need to be accountable for as well within yourself. And so there's a very fantastic book called Atomic Habits.
I've been reading it. I'm almost done with it, actually.
Yeah, and Atomic Habits is a book that I revisit every single year. In January, I start off and I read Atomic Habits. And I think that we neglect to realize the importance of these small particles of our day. For instance, you're from military tradition, right? The importance of making your bed in the morning. It's not just because, I'm just gonna make my bed just to do it. You are training yourself to respect your space, right? And when you respect your space, you operate within that space from a space of cleanliness, from a space of from a place of respect and honor, right? That is really at the core tenement of that particular act. So whatever habit that you're trying to develop or get rid of, right? You want to develop a rooted understanding of that particular habit in connection to yourself in a very grounded way, because you have to anchor it. And if you want to tap into consistency and really believe in doing something from a very deep, serious way, like you have to really find out why this particular act is crucial to the way in which that I understand myself and relate to myself, and be able to extend that self out into the world. So if you're not connecting yourself to these larger ideas and to your surroundings, right, your purpose and your understanding becomes a little bit shafted, right? Because now, and this is not about developing grandiose ideas, right? This is really about understanding that you are important, right? Especially in the face of, I think everyone just wants to be heard. Oprah Winfrey always says that in all of her interviews, she knows that there's one thing that has remained consistent across all of her interviews, is that everyone that she has ever interviewed wants to be heard. They want to be seen, they want to be felt, and they want to be understood. And so what I'm trying to say is that we need to also develop this understanding that we're important. We're important not because that other people say that we are important. We're important because your heart, your mind, your soul, your spirit, all of the parts of who you are, right, that come from within, has value. We have to value ourselves. And I think Atomic Habits really allows all of us to take a look at our everyday activities in a very palpable way that has a lot of pulse.
I like that a lot, and I really love you mentioned Atomic Habits, because even in the very beginning of the book, he says, it was a Spurs, I think it was Spurs assistant coach. They were talking about how, you know, they were trying to break, there was this huge stone, and working every single day is like chipping away at a huge stone.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like it's really making a difference.
Yeah.
And then the stone cracks open after so many days.
Right.
And he was like, was it the last hit, or was it all the hits before that that allowed it to split open?
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the thing that I feel like embodies this whole kind of idea of consistency, and just the twofold way that we're talking about it is every day creating habits, and also that then creating a piece of ourselves that is now a part of this greater whole. And so like they're kind of these twofold things where both definitions kind of just coalesce together so beautifully, and it's kind of, to me, I think one of the things that you mentioned, which is you know, making your bed in the morning. There's actually studies that even show that there's like benefits to that, to making your bed every morning. And I'm gonna be honest, I ain't even gonna pretend like I'm one of those type of people. Before I was living with my partner, that I was the one making my bed every morning, because I wasn't. But after that, I'm like, now I see her, I'm like, I can't be slacking. Like, how is that bed gonna be made? But that's like the idea of like someone who's just existing in their space and who they are, being able to create change in the people around them. And that's the power that we all have.
Yes.
Right? It's like, and it may not be someone that you're living with or whatever, but just a stranger walking across the street. Everybody's life is as complex as your own, the idea of science, right? And so this idea that, you know, you have that much potential within you to be able to change the world. It may not be in the way that like is like you're LeBron James or whatever, or you know, some celebrity, but that is within a space that they exist. There's people in the world that don't know who they are, but they are able to exist within a form that they've been able to sacrifice and put in the work and put in and be so consistent, so that they can say, when I leave this thing, regardless of whether it's my relationship, whether it's my, you know, my job, my career, whatever, I gave it everything I had.
Right.
And I think that that's the thing that, you know, it starts with the small things. It starts with the habits. It starts with, let me make my bed in the morning. It starts with, let me reflect on the things that I did yesterday, on the good things that I did.
Yes.
And even maybe something that someone told me, which I really did like, was that having a reflection journal.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, writing something good that happened. And so every single day, so now every day, I think it was Israel Adesanya, he actually said that, the UFC fighter. And he said after a while, he was looking forward to the end of the day, or trying to find things that he would be able to write about at the end of the day. So your mind is like, you're almost training your mind to look for positivity.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's so key. I'm so happy you said that, because that's that's a protective mechanism that we have developed in ourselves, in our psychology. I was a psych major in undergrad, so I love psychology. And you know, so it's not it's not a negative thing, that it's just a thing that we do. Our brain is trained to be able to detect the exit. You know, our brain is able to detect, you know, parts or something that's going to cause us harm. And so we can either fixate on that, or we can fixate on positivity. And so we have to train our brain to be able to access the positivity, you know, at the same rate that we do for the negativity. Or when the negativity does come up, we have to redirect ourselves into that positivity. So it's a practice. It's something that we have to intentionally do. It's a muscle that we have to build. And it's something that, again, we have to be intentional about it. And so writing it out every single day, you know, I'm a big fan of, like I said, journaling. Paper Blank, I love their journals. They're really great journals. And so I have like multiple journals that I've been keeping for myself and over the time. And it's been, you know, sometimes I'll go back and read a few lines and things and just kind of really surprise myself You know, and we can be hard on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We can extend ourselves grace at any point in time, and I think it allows for us to keep extending further and keep going further.
I like that a lot, and I think that, you know, just a beautiful segue into this one of my favorite segments, continuing and called planting the seed. And so, continuing with the segment of consistency,
Yeah.
our next segment is planting the seed, in which we ask our guests to share a quote that embodies today's topic. So, Luke, what's a quote that reminds you to stay consistent and perhaps even giving you clarity when life starts to feel chaotic or disconnected?
Yeah, so I actually just came across the quote through conversation with two of my mentors, and so it's kind of like a hamburger of a lot of things, and I put it on the background of my phone.
Yeah, you can get that.
And it's kind of like a poem, not a poem, but it's kind of like something that I kind of keep, kind of say to myself. So here's the thing. Many reps remove doubt. Stop measuring the weight of your plate and start tasting what's on it. And so that's like the main quote. And then what I do is I move into, you asked for this feast, not to overwhelm yourself, but to savor your becoming. The momentum is there, okay? You feel it because you called it in. It's not a frenzy, just focus. Chew with intention. Let clarity call the next move. Even the dense bites carry momentum, okay? 5 minutes of aligned action is worth more than hours of resistance. This is not about proving, it's about honoring, embodying, and answering the life that you have asked for. And so like that, many reps removed out, so it's this idea that whatever you can do it as many times as possible until it becomes second nature. And so, I think that has given me a lot of peace that I can do it. I just have to do it multiple times.
Right.
And I think that sometimes we also allow our process, we judge our process. The consistency and the way that we apply our consistency, it also, like, we can judge that and be kind of this weird, we can have this weird relationship to our consistency in a way that hinders our progress. We talk about, instead of the fact that you've done something, we talk about, oh, well, I wish I would have done it this way. Or, I think there is room for that, right? Getting to the destination, in a very specific way. But I also think that there's so many other elements that we can also talk about. Right. There's other topics of conversation, and I think, we can make it. We can make it if we really, do it enough times, I guess. Many reps will remove the doubt. Yeah.
I really do like that quote. And it was a part in there that you said that I really liked. And it was, what was the part that he said about, it was like it said something about you eating, but you wish for this plate, or you hope for this.
Yes. This is the plate that you've asked for. Stop measuring the plate and start tasting what's on it.
Yes.
You're complaining about how you're at this buffet of life and your plate is so heavy, and you've put the mashed potatoes, the collard greens, the fried chicken, and all those things. But I used to be vegan, but maybe those things are vegan, like vegan tofu or seitan or something like that. But I think there has to be room for that, right? To sort of the knowledge of how and heavy the weight of the plate, but just dig in. You know what I mean? Dig in.
And it's because I do think that there's times where we forget who put the plate together. Because even if you're talking relationships, friendships, certain things, and even jobs, career. You like, it's getting really difficult. It's getting really hard. Oh, we can't have conversations like we used to. Oh, I don't have the spark that I once had. But how do you find it again is the question. How do you reinvent yourself again so that the food can start tasting like it once could? It doesn't mean that the whole plate has to go to waste.
Right.
I mean, you just grab some seasoning, what I'm saying? Salt and pepper, whatever you got to do to make sure. And I'm not saying that if you've done everything you possibly can and for some reason there's something that is saying that you need to move forward, without this person, without this job, without this career, then do that. So be it, right? But there's times where I think a lot more than not, we move on before we should have.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I think that, yeah, it's we move on so quickly, you know, and it's this idea that, you know, because I'm not good at this the first time, or, you know, because I failed at it the first time, doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, maybe you were supposed to fail the first time. Maybe you were supposed to fail because you underestimated the importance of that particular task. You forgot to study the task in the way that you should have.
Right.
And you did not honor the task in the way that you should have from its perception, or from the way that you first met it. And I think that that's so important, you know, understanding that because you fail at something the first time doesn't negate you from trying again.
Right.
Especially in medicine, you know, I think there's this idea that we have to be perfect and everything has to be packaged and presented and just ready to go, ready for the runway. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that idea, you know, it's very toxic. It's very toxic in medicine because it kind of paralyzes you from even beginning, from even picking up the pen to write. And I think that we have to overcome this expectation of perfection. And I think that consistency through discipline, through this repetition, through this consistent understanding of action, right? Understanding the action, and producing it, and really the energy behind movement, right, is so powerful. There's so many people right now, whether or not you're in medicine, who are really paralyzed by the fear of not being great at something, or fear of failure.
Right.
You know, I love going through YouTube pages and watching the very first YouTube video of whoever I'm watching, and I just want to see, like, what were they talking about?
Right.
What was your video quality? You know what I mean? They started. You know what I mean? Despise ye not humble beginning, having the faith the size of a mustard seed. You know, and just beginning is so powerful. Yeah,
I like that, and it's crazy because I really did like that part that you said, which is, you go back, right? Like the people who have millions of views, they had to start with one.
Oh, most definitely.
Right?
Most definitely.
So it's one of those things where it's like, there's so many lives that we lose by strictly inattention alone. And it's sad because you think about it, and I think that's one of the reasons why I tell people to, like, you know, you go, you leap, you try, because you now know this version, even though it is not the ideal. I don't think, you know, there is a such thing as failure from an objective standpoint if it's not the goal that you wanted to reach. But you now have unlocked a new version of yourself that now has been able to embark on this journey and realized, okay, this is the point that I'm at, but I know if I still want to get here is my assessment. It's kind of like, you know, how we take our exams or whatever. It's a barometer to help us gauge where we are and where we need to go. But if we never do anything, how do you know at all?
Yeah, you never know. And imagine you setting out to do something with your life, and you know, I saw someone with a shirt that said "Dreams never die." That dream that you have is going to resurface itself in some type of a way. Some type of serendipity is going to occur in your life that you're going to be faced with. Wow, I have to honor this. I have to honor this. This is coming back to me.
Right.
And I'm a strong believer in the fact that you have so much purpose, and it's got to come out. It's got to come out of you.
Yeah.
Whatever is inside of you is going to come out. And life is going to bring you to a point in which you need to be the benefactor of your own purpose.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important because the people who you were editing that first YouTube video, so you were the first person to see yourself in that light. And for the fact that you, whoever it is, that YouTube person, or they're able to see themselves and be the first viewer, and you being that first viewer is so important. What you tell yourself in the beginning stages of your purpose is so powerful.
I like that.
Yeah.
And it's, you just sparked this idea in my mind that you said something which I really I think is something I agree with tenfold, which is this idea of light. You're putting when your purpose goes external, it is light, right?
Yeah.
And it can like illuminate so many things, create so much change in the world for the best, right? For the better of society, for the better of yourself, right?
Yes.
But imagine if the opposite, if that is light, right? If it comes out and it's light, then if it stays on the inside, it has to be darkness, right? Because now you think about it and you're like, oh, well, like imagine, so I never started this podcast, like, and you see somebody else do a podcast, man, that podcast gonna fail. That little podcast, you know how people say that little,
right. Yeah.
That little, they got that little job. You know what I'm saying? Like because because it's like that, right? Because it's like these are the things, people are doing things that you didn't have the courage to do, and so it makes you, it touches that purpose that you still haven't been able to move past or drive past or fight over the courage to have it, come out of you.
Yeah.
Right? And like there should always be, and I talked to someone else on the podcast a while ago, it should be a sense of urgency.
Oh, that's my favorite word.
Right?
Oh my gosh, that's my favorite word. Oh my gosh.
Why is that?
Oh my, urgency is so important. I love that word so much because I realized I remember I was in the airport one day and my flight, the gate was about to close and I was like, I want a smash burger. And when I tell you, I felt like everyone was moving in slow-mo.
Yeah.
The lady would just pick up the bun, put it on the lettuce, take the mayonnaise, slap it on. I'm like, there is no urgency at the airport.
Right.
You need, if there's any place to move quickly and but outside of that too, it's just that we have to move with so much urgency because in this moment right now, things are moving so fast. That's why I put the word momentum in my poem.
Which you gotta send me.
Right. Yes, for sure. I'll send it to you. Because your purpose is going to come with so much momentum that we're gonna, it's easy to, say, okay, I feel so overwhelmed, I feel so anxious, those are real emotions. Those are real emotions. But why are those emotions occurring? Those emotions are occurring because your purpose has so much urgency and is tethered to so many other people who are depending on you to produce within that purpose. So you have to operate with a sense of urgency whenever you are doing something, and that's why things start to move very quickly. So let's say you send an email out tomorrow for a scholarship, 10 days later, you get the scholarship. I mean, yes, there's a deadline and it has to be reviewed and things of that nature, but that's just an example of just like how quickly things can move in this way where you would have never thought that, wow, the scholarship committee would have made that decision in 2 weeks and here I have my money and now I have to go, spend it to, print out a poster to go to a conference or something like that. Whatever it is, right? There's going to be this momentum that you have to anticipate. And so that you have to meet the moment. And you will see that technology will begin to meet you in that particular moment. AI was not a thing, let's say 2-3 years ago. And I think AI is just it's a very powerful example of how it's allowing a lot of people to produce within their purpose at a very rapid rate. Right. Because we have so many powerful creative ideas and we just need just a little bit of oil to get to the other side.
Right. Wow. And I think one of the things is that I want to mention, I want to sprinkle in there before we transition to the final segment, is this idea that purpose or urgency is in of itself. I don't know why I thought about this, but urgency is like a power. It's a sense of, it's a superpower because you think about it, not everybody can be urgent physically. mentally, emotionally be
Yeah.
urgent. So
it's
while
like
you can't,
ableism is
right.
probably in that too. Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you have the ability to say, you know what, let me just go ahead and go to the gym first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh, let me just go, fill out this scholarship application. Let me fill out this application for this job. Let me do this. Let me do that.
Yeah.
You can physically do it. You're able to do it. And in this moment, this is the only time that exists right now that you know for sure will be here.
Yes.
Right. So it's I just really am glad you highlighted that because it's so important.
Yes.
Yes, we should be present. Yes, we should be finding contentment within the moment. But when you have these things that come up that you know need to be done, having a sense of urgency, I think, can allow you a difference between a version of yourself that you knew you always could be.
Yes.
And someone else that you may not even recognize,
Oh, most definitely, 100%. And the way we access that urgency is by understanding the self, right? And having a very clear understanding of why that urgency is necessitated in that particular moment. And that is always going to come down to your manifesto. It's always going to come down to understanding yourself and why that is needed in that particular moment, and you will act accordingly to your purpose. That's something that I wanted to talk to you about as well too, is understanding the posture that is necessitated for your purpose. That is very, very, very important. Yeah.
I feel like that was a mic drop there. I'm gonna have to. I don't even want to or add too much to that because a beautiful way to end that segment and transition into the next one, which is that one was one of my favorites.
Play this game. Yeah.
This one was my favorite.
Yeah.
And it's planting the seed.
Yeah.
And we like to end every segment with this or in every podcast with this segment.
Sure.
And we'll pull a card from this game. We're not really strangers, not a sponsor.
Of course.
And answer it authentically in order to harvest and ripen a deeper meaning of ourselves. So I'll have you pull from here first, and you'll ask me. I'll answer. And then I'll pull a card and then ask you.
Great.
If it's white, then it's good. If it's red, then you could just put it back.
Oh, okay. I have. Okay. Ooh. Okay. Have you ever told someone I love you but didn't mean it? If so, why? Is that a good one?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How about I told someone I love you and didn't mean it? I feel like
I love you. Not
yeah.
love you. I have so much love for you.
You know what?
Yeah.
I feel like, did I think that I didn't mean it at the time? I feel like I did, but I don't think I really knew what love was. And so, to answer that question, I think maybe everything before, and I don't want this to be all like, like mushy or whatever, but like prior to me meeting my fiance, the people that I had told I love you from that romantic standpoint, I don't think I really knew what love actually was, like sacrifice actually was. And like realizing that.
So love is sacrifice for you.
Yeah, love is sacrifice. Love is,
or part of it.
Yeah, part of it. Like love is, I think, in of itself, a religious quest. Because you have to have sacrifice, you have to have confession, you have to have suffering. And it was only through like going through this like being with this person and like being like, dang, I want to share life with you. This is crazy. That I'm like, I'm going to have to like lose parts of myself, gain parts of myself, figure out because this person is also doing that, is also going through her own life and journey. And through that, I'm going to choose to love anyway, 30 years from now, no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the heart, is a religious quest in of itself. It's kind of like how I look at synonymous to like a monk going to a monastery.
Yeah.
Right? And that you tie yourself and you spiritually tie yourself, because love, God, because for those who aren't religious, and those who aren't religious, I personally do think that God is love, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at that, like the way that you're able to like not the selfless part of you, the part of you that's like saying like I want to be there no matter what. I know I'm tired. I know I want to do things for me, but I want to like sacrifice. I want to confess. I want to get like this is your relationship that you have with like God. But like what is your relationship with love? A lot of people I think kind of think of these two things two distinct, look at these things distinctly. But I think they're one and the same. If you find someone, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a romantic partner, but someone that you know, like a friend, like a life partner. I don't think a life partner has to necessarily be a romantic partner, but someone that, no matter what, I'm gonna be there for you. I think tells us a lot about who we are and why we're here, and I think that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So I think if to answer the question, I think everything that I had said prior to any of the partners that I had been with before, I don't think I truly knew what love was to even say that I love you.
Yeah, and do you feel as though that you've landed on a consistent definition of love? Because it sounds like, you know, the definition of love that you had prior probably made it as though that when you said it before, it didn't count, really.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you said it and you were honest in that moment, looking back, with this new definition of love that you have, is that like a consistent definition that you are going to carry forward? Or are you still seeing it in how it could sort of evolve as time moves forward?
You know what? I think yes and yes. So the reason why I say that is because I think the evolution in of itself is consistent. The idea that you basically are, you know what, I'm gonna be with this person. If I'm gonna be with this person I've been with this person for 3 years now. I'm on 2-3 years, and about 3 years now. And so 10 years from now, our love is gonna look completely different. I can take that to the bank, right? And to expect us to be the same, I think causes the relationship to die. Yeah. And it creates, you know, a chasm that spreads us further and further apart until I can't even see this person anymore. So to expect and anticipate that this love is going to be the same, or when I tell her I love her, it means the same thing, it shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's like, we have kids together now. I don't think he's saying that.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have kids together yet, but in the future,
right?
You know, we've lost family members together. We would have buried people together. We would have done so many things, and so for the love to be what it is now, then doesn't mean that there was a lot of growth. And it's funny because you aren't even the same person. So to expect that your love is going to stay the same, I think is almost kind of puts you at a bit of a disadvantage for you know, a lifelong partner. Yeah.
That is something I always say.
Yeah.
I always say that. So I'm talking to someone that I've been talking to, like, we've known each other for a long time, but it's just like, I'm happy that someone else understands this dynamic in the way that I do. And I think also, everything you say.
Yeah. Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that how much, when we talk about the evolution being consistent, right? We have to present. Are you a believer, or do you find that it is important to display all prior iterations of yourself prior to going on that journey with that partner? How much of that is authentic? How much of that is vulnerable? Are there parts or iterations of your prior self that you may not be comfortable displaying that is, you know, it's I feel like it has to exist in this space.
Right.
It has to.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you feel like, I guess, are you asking the question, do you feel like prior iterations should be like present or exposed before you taking that journey? Or
so I had two questions about that. One, that I've probably like unpacked from my personal self. It's just that within loving that person, right, you have to also love those prior iterations of yourself. So when I am showing my heart and displaying my heart to the person that I love, right, my understanding is that I am just simply displaying it. I'm not asking them to also meet me from a place of love, because I have to first love those prior iterations of myself. And so I'm just displaying myself, and I am sharing with you all those prior iterations and all those things, the highs, the lows, the things that I've had to overcome. And I'm not asking you, I'm not begging you to accept it. I'm not asking you to love it. I'm just asking you, I'm just sharing it with you. I am sharing it with you. I think that we have to share our love. Yeah.
So I guess what you're saying, and I think it is a very interesting question, which is, do you feel like we as people do ourselves a disservice by, I guess, when we put our love out there too, especially people that we're dating and with in romantic relationships, that we do ourselves a disservice by creating a sense of expectation in a way that they should respond. Meaning, okay, I brought my girl home some flowers. I shouldn't, like, I feel like if she don't say thank you, then we gonna have a problem. I'm not saying me personally, but some people would say that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And instead being like, this, I'm showing my form of love, and that should be enough for me, and I should be content with that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so in terms of like acts of service or like our love language, or that is something that has to be massaged through relation. I think more so in terms of like the union.
Gotcha.
The union is sort of like understanding who I am in union with.
Gotcha.
I have to give you the opportunity to see the full totality of who I am.
That makes sense.
And peel back those onions. And I find that that takes time, right? To peel back those layers little by little by little by little. So that's why a lot of elders always say, start off as friends. Start off as friends, because then you can develop that in a sort of this natural winding path that we can come to understand each other in a very deep way that doesn't have to come from like a big reveal or a big moment. And I think oftentimes how you share information is how it will also be received as well. That was just something that I just came to mind. It's just sort of like, I can't demand. I like the demand for love in the present, right? Also, how much of that love am I demanding you to love that prior version of myself? Right. Does that prior version of myself even matter in this present? I think that's something that I often think about, because we've lived so many lives, or we've had there's so many facets to ourselves, and it's like, you can't just throw all the spaghetti at the wall all at once. Everything takes like this beautiful like unwinding process. It takes time. Like love takes time, and your definition of love takes time. So that's what I was saying with the evolution. No. You have to be invested in that evolution all the way from beginning to end.
I agree with that, and it's one of those things, because a lot of our deepest, darkest versions of ourselves that we don't want to see and don't want to face are like locked away in a box, locked away in a dungeon, locked away in another area of the core of within ourselves that requires years and years and moments of vulnerability before it can even be touched, not even open.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I find that right there is so precious. And I've been in relationships, where I've been able to share that aspect of myself and that vulnerability and that love. And it's so beautiful when you find someone, and you're, and someone who can carry that water. Not everyone has a pitcher for your water. Some people have a teacup, some people have a cup, some people don't have a plastic cup, some people's cups have holes in it, right? So you have to find someone who's able and willing to handle you with as delicately as though that you are, and be able to apply this tenderness to who you are in all iterations. But you're not asking them, you're not requiring them to love you, but if they do, it's really a beautiful thing that has brought me to tears, really. So love is bell hooks and stuff, all about things, love, all about love. So
it's so crazy. I'm actually getting my partner. She read the book, and I'm getting my mom the book. Such a good. She's so good. Did you read Salvation? Did you read the trilogy?
No, but I have some other bell hooks books as well too. And oh my gosh, I remember reading a chapter of a book with someone that I love, and it was her and I, we were reading the book, to each other, and it just brought us to tears. And like just reading that book and just really like connecting. Oh, that's so powerful.
Shout out to Bell Hook.
Bell Hook. I love talking about love. I can talk about love like
honestly,
all day.
man.
Honestly, yeah. I don't want the podcast to run too long.
Oh no, man, you good. You good. We are good, man. We're going as long as we want to, man.
Yeah.
You ready for your card?
Yes.
Alrighty. So this is actually a good one.
Oh.
So this is they're all pretty good.
Yeah.
If you could get to know someone in your life on a deeper level, who would it be and why?
Wow. And someone in my life on a deeper level. Wow. I think, the first person that comes to my mind is my grandfather. I think there's a lot there. I mean, there's a quote that says like a tree in a forest knows everything. Like, that this idea that, they've been here, they've seen a lot of things. And like we said, those conversations, that trauma, that pain, those parts of ourselves that we are so delicate with, right? And the questions kind of combine. I would love to just know my grandfather. He's alive, and he's just this stoic, strong brother. You know what I mean? And now as he's getting older, he's starting to like, he's just a little bit softer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would just love to just like get to know him on a deeper level and just like unpack and just I want the stories. I want the stories. I just feel like especially when you're connected to someone genetically and everything, I think I just want to know him. Yeah, I just want to know everything about him. Yeah.
Wow.
Not
What do you
enough
feel
time.
like? What would be? Huh?
Not enough time.
Oh yeah. What do you feel like would be the first thing you would ask? 'Cause, I mean, where does he live?
He lives in Florida, back home in Florida,
Gotcha.
Miami. I guess the first thing I would ask is, what, like, when you were little, like what dream did you have for yourself? Like what was it that you wanted to do? And I'll ask him. I'll ask him because I think that's a very important question. Yeah.
That's gonna cascade into a beautiful, like, couple of hours of just beautiful storytelling. Beautiful storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think that's this is what this is about. Just conversations, things that us connection. I think. And I appreciate you again for coming in today and connecting with me and just kind of sharing this moment, because like we said, this is the only moment that we know, and we can truly understand. So I appreciate you taking me on this journey and us doing this journey together. And so guys, that wraps up another episode of Stranger Fruit. Today's conversation brought us closer to understanding the multifaceted nature of consistency. We explored how it not only shows up in routines, but how we live in alignment with who we are and what we believe. It's not about just what we do every day, it's about the daily actions, about how daily actions echo your truth, your identity, and your purpose. So I hope you listeners, gained a lot from this conversation as I did. Thank you all for tuning in. And thank you again, Luke, for showing us what consistency can look like in real life. Do you want to share some socials so that people can find you, or are you off the grid? Right?
Oh yeah, so my Instagram is currently deactivated, but Sir Luke Nelson. I used to have like a small blog. Sir Luke Nelson, very accessible. Even honestly, I was thinking about that. I was like, hey, you want to call me? I don't know. If people get my number, they'll never know. But I don't know. I think just reach out. Yeah. You'll know where to find me. If you're looking for me, you can find me. I will say that I am definitely for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that's amazing. And everybody, remember, the most sustainable fruit isn't just the ones planted here. It's derived from conversations such as these. So don't be afraid to plant seeds of your own with those around you. You'll be surprised at what might sprout. Till next time.
Yes.